just wanted to get your first impressions on how August through December has gone in this next, in this first semester of school.
Yeah, it's been great. I think, that's the neat thing about education. We're one of those places that actually kind of have a break, semesters that kind of do that. So we have been doing a lot of reflecting on that. And, I think just what really stands out to me is just progress that we've made. This is our third year now of working on some of the things that we've worked on. And it's kind of neat. I think initially we were talking about changes that needed to be made and progress we needed to make. And it's kind of nice now we actually have data that's showing that the direction and the hard work of our teachers and our families is actually paying off. Some of the things we've seen, especially early literacy, is something that a lot of people are concerned about. The whole idea of how important it is to teach kids to read at a young age. And we've seen over the last 4 years, we've seen about a 9% increase in proficiency rates just overall in early literacy. Especially one we're proud of this year is we topped 50% proficiency. For fourth grade, it's the first time we've ever been there as a district. Our third grade.
What do you credit that to?
I will say this. I think, we've said for 3 years now, really just trying to make complex simple. I think sometimes in education we can get overly complex with things, and we can kind of, keep adding on or learn something new in a conference we went to. And I think, Aaron Phillips is kind of our executive director who's over our subject area teaching and learning for us. And I think she's done a really good job just of peeling back some of the noise and really just getting back to fundamentals. And we've really just kind of continued to stress, what is that? Like, what is the recipe to make a good reader? And it really starts with the materials you use in the classroom, high quality instructional materials. It really has teachers planning together in what we call professional learning communities, spending the time looking at their lessons together, what's working in your classroom, what's working in mine. And then really, looking at the data, looking for those trends and providing those interventions when they need to be provided. And so I think combining all those things and just making sure that's happening every day in every classroom has made a huge difference. Teachers have really enjoyed that. I think it's simplified some of the work for them. It's very difficult to teach students how to read, and I think they've really gotten back to those basics. And then I think when you see that hard work pay off with numbers going up and more students being successful, that's great, because that's really meaning the future for those students is going to be really bright now.
Yeah, and I think with those reading scores, that there's been a lot of focus on that. This next semester is going to be busy with TCAP testing.
Yeah, it is.
How are y'all preparing for that? Are y'all tackling that any differently than you did last year? What have y'all learned so far?
Yeah.
I know you kind of touched on that,
Sure.
but specifically, for that TCAP test.
Yeah, so we really look at assessment in general as we try not to call that out separate. It really is part of the learning cycle. When you're teaching somebody to do anything, there's that part of, you teach it, and then you see, what are you going to teach them, and you see if it worked or not. And the way you see if it worked is you assess to see what their understanding is, and then you go back where they had, maybe they didn't perform where you want them to, and you reteach. And that's kind of, that cycle happens every day in every classroom. If it's a pop quiz, if it's what we call a bell ringer, students write something on the way out the door to say, here's what I learned today. Teachers are always doing that level of assessment. And so what we try to do is look at, and to tell families and to tell students, this assessment is just a chance to show what you know. We don't teach to the test. We don't put a lot of pressure on that to happen. What we want to do is make sure we're teaching the right thing every day, stretching our kids with rigorous grade level materials. And so we kind of try to play that down and just let them show that. And again, based on our data we're seeing over the last 3 or 4 years, it's really paying off. So, no new silver bullets. Usually there aren't in education. It's just kind of, to use a sports analogy, you kind of get back to those fundamentals, and you just continue to get better and better at those fundamentals. And what we're looking at now is we know kind of the recipe, and now we want to make sure it's happening every day in every classroom. And that's when we'll reach more and more students.
Yeah, great. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about safety and security. I know that's a lot of things that parents have asked us that they want to hear more about. One of the things that y'all did to start at the beginning of the school year was the text to tip hotline. I wanted to ask you how that's going and how that's affecting safety and security within the school district.
Yeah, I'll say first, safety is our number one concern. We know we have 60,000 students that come to us every day, and my daughters both went through our school system too, and just know what that's like as a parent to send your student send your child, your most prized possession, right, to school every day. So we take that very seriously. I think sometimes the public doesn't understand, just as a school system, how robust system that we have. We have over 125 officers We have 24/7 dispatch. We're on the clock around the whole clock. We're there all the time. Someone's there. We're working with our law enforcement partners all the time. All of our officers are bonded by the sheriff's department. So, it's not, I think sometimes people think, oh, you have security and maybe it's like crossing guards, and we have those too, but that's not what our security is. They're all highly trained, know how to use firearms, trained in the latest technologies and the latest strategies, and we have them in every building that we have. And then you pile that on with our partners. Our partners from both Knoxville Police Department, Chief Noel has been amazing, Sheriff Spangler amazing as well. Depending on where those schools fall out, we're in conversation with them almost on a daily basis, depending, sometimes multiple times a day. Just any kind of lead, sharing that, Homeland Security, the FBI, all of these folks are doing that. You mentioned the text to tip. Kind of what we encourage people to do, and it's really worked well for us. Our 3 big strategies are: 1, if you see something, say something. And the text to tip was really something we added this year. We put it on every student's Chromebook that they have, so it's an anonymous way. If they see anything, if they hear anything, that they can report that. And so there have been some instances this year that we've learned something through that started an investigation for us to look into, and we were able to proactively look at that. The other 2 things we look for, one is we believe our best defense still is a highly trained armed officer in every school. That served us very well. Just amazed. We were at the graduation 2 weeks ago. Sheriff Spangler was there with us too. I'm just so proud of those men and women who really understand the importance of that role. How relational they are. We talk a lot about, you're maybe the first encounter a lot of our students have with a uniformed officer, and they take that very seriously. In lots of places, they help with homework. They are the people you see in the hallway and have those conversations with, and that's critically important, and they take that very serious. And then the third for us is every one of our schools, all 91 schools, they have their own plan. I mean, they're all built a little different. They're located differently on streets or in neighborhoods. All of them have a way to secure the perimeter. Some of that's fencing, some of that's things like vestibules, but all of those, we have a plan for each individual school and their protocols they'll look at for all of those. So the text to tip is working really well, but we want to make sure all 3 of those things are happening, and it has served us well to keep us safe.
Yeah. Another thing that kind of happened in September, there were a lot of school threats, and that ended up with, Sheriff Spangler making some statements. It really ties up some resources for law enforcement, but also for you guys on the school side. How do you guys navigate having so many of those? Because you also don't want to call too much attention to them.
Right.
Because you don't want, any copycats. We see that happen sometimes.
Right.
Where do y'all stand on those types of things?
We take every threat seriously because you don't know. And the one that you don't take serious could be the real one. And again, just very pleased with the partnership we have both with Sheriff Spangler and with Chief Noel. They're the same way. We're all very united on that front. And so that stretch was kind of what was happening nationally. We kind of had national things that were going on. A lot of it was social media, a lot of it was internet things. Some of it tagged like from different states and those sorts of things. And it wasn't just targeting schools in Knoxville, but all around. Again, from the FBI to Homeland Security, all of those folks worked closely with us too, took every one of those serious. A lot of long hours, a lot of phone calls during those times. And I think you saw in some of Sheriff Spangler's comments, just the kind of the frustration, just for families. I think, thank goodness none of those ended up being credible threats, but we treated them all as they were. And it seemed like we had, some students who just weren't taking that very seriously. So, we just stay the course, continue to educate, continue to ask parents to help us, have conversations about how serious that is and disruptive that is. And in time, things, kind of got back to more normal. But we will continue to, whatever manpower it takes to pursue those to make sure we're safe, we'll use.
Yeah. Another thing that's going to kind of dominate some discussion within school board meetings as we head into January with the legislative session is different legislation regarding schools. Have you been talking to any of our local lawmakers about some legislation that you want to see passed, things that you could help Knox County schools?
I think lots of times, there's lots of talk of different things. I think, just try to see what's kind of on the horizon. I know I've had conversations with like the Commissioner of Education and just kind of see what they hear and some local folks with that. I think for the most part, people kind of wait till they get in session and see what actually makes and doesn't make. But I think it wouldn't surprise me this year if we see some things around cell phones. I mean, Virginia, I know past that, and I think there's probably an appetite from some legislators. Not saying I've talked to anyone locally who said they want to do this, but I've heard some talk that there could be some movement on restricting those some. There's been some conversation, some of the library materials, that maybe there's a chance to clean some things up on some of that too, and that's not unusual. They'll pass a law, and usually the next year they'll look back at some different things and try to clean some of that up. I think that would be it would be important. I have talked to some folks about that, especially when it comes to like sacred books. I think that would be an important thing to try to protect, because there's a lot of those texts that we don't want to get into talking about, do they meet these requirements or not. I think they hold a special place in a lot of families' hearts and minds and values, and I think that would probably be something that would be wise for them to take up. We continue to hear things around proficiency, and we saw a few years ago proficiency around third grade literacy. I think there is some small talk about, there's an argument that it worked. I would argue that it worked because the funding came with it for the interventions in the summer, and so we've seen increases in those third grade. I think there's maybe some appetite for conversation around, is numeracy next? Is there something we would align somewhere early on that we would talk about meeting a standard? Whether it's retention or not, I don't know with that. So I think we'll see some of those kinds of things that will start becoming part of the conversation.
Yeah, kind of with those library materials, that's something that was passed on a state level. It's out of the hands of you guys as a school district. But can you talk about how has that process looked? I know it's been a big lift for librarians to identify those materials. You guys did release a list of 48 titles. Walk me through what those conversations looked like.
Yeah, for us, and we said this early on with the board when the law was being considered. Knox County's had a long history of a procedure that's probably been around for 20 years that served well. When there were books that needed to be challenged for contents, it could be anything from being too scary. A parent might think that of an elementary class, or maybe the content being what they think wasn't appropriate even for a middle school or high school. So we've had, prior to this law, a long-standing way to review that. And our review is always at the school level, and then it could be appealed to a district level team, and then ultimately to the board. So I felt like, we were kind of ahead of the curve on that we had an ability to do that. I think what really changed with that law was this was the first time we saw language that was clear about what called out certain things that would be now illegal in the state. And so we took a long pause when that came out, because as an educator, it's really important that when you remove a book out of circulation, that's a pretty big deal, because in education we're trying to expose people to new ideas and diverse ideas, but at the same time I'm trying to keep students safe, and there's a level of decency. So but that's not easy. That's a very gray area when you start walking down that. So our first thing that we want to do, Sarah Searles is over our librarians, was brilliant, does a great job with that. We kind of pulled back and said, let's be intentional, let's be thoughtful about this process, let's not knee-jerk and into conforming. And we told the state we probably wouldn't be in conform with the law on July 1st, and we weren't, because we wanted to think through our process to make sure we were good at that. I think you'll see the amount that we actually pulled off in this first was probably lower than we saw in some other districts across the state. And it's because we wanted to be thoughtful. So our process really was, we wanted to begin with the 91 people who are trained professionals and hold master's degree, our librarians. But we didn't want any one person to be the decision maker. We wanted them to look through their collections. We did trainings with them, Sarah Searles did, to kind of say these are what they mean. We worked with our law department to what do these terms really mean. And then we had every librarian be able to submit sets of books or ones that they had questions about. Those were taken into consideration and checked. Conversations with the law department as well as our academics team to kind of look what that looked like. If there were questions, some of those that they brought up didn't get pulled, some of those did, and we ended up with that list of 48. So the way we want to talk about this, a lot of people want to ask the question of are you in compliance now? And for us it's a process. You're never in compliance. We've got hundreds of thousands of books, and so anyone can bring one to us. Our librarians will continue as they do by law to curate their collection, go through that and look for the different things, and we will continue to have that on a quarterly basis, that librarians will bring that collectively. There can be conversation about that, and when the decision is made that it is against the law, then we pull that across the whole district. So we left it where parents can still challenge too, so they have a right to do that, and they would probably help us see some things too. It's impossible for us to have every eyes on every passage of everything that's in every library right now. So for us, we're treating it as a process that we'll continue to do, but I think we feel like this first batch was probably, hopefully one of those that was pretty thorough and would be that. So I think moving forward, We don't suspect that we're going to have, a bunch more down the road, but we also know that, there are some we could have missed in the process. So we'll continue that on a quarterly basis.
Yeah. I think another thing that's going to kind of dominate some discussion in the legislative session is school vouchers. I know that is probably going to come up again. There's already a bill. Have you had any conversations with lawmakers about it? I know KCS hasn't talked about it a whole lot,
Sure.
As a district, because it is a private school versus public school thing. Have you had any conversations with lawmakers about it?
I mean, it's been part of the conversation, I think, for the last 6 years, probably. I think that's something with Governor Lee. It's been part of, I don't know if it's been totally 6 years. He's been in for 6 years, but it's been something that's circulated almost every time. The reason we haven't made a whole lot of comments is, when I talk to people, we're going to stay focused on what we need to do as a school system. And whether a voucher law passes or doesn't pass, we're still going to wake up every day and maintain our 4 priorities: to teach our kids to read, to do math, to get them ready for life after high school, and do all those kinds of things. So, what we can't do is allow things to be distractions. We have a lot of students that we're continuously trying to improve their scores on. I would say this: I think education always needs to be evolving. And I think about Knox County schools, I think we've hit a good balance of that. Most of our parents do have voices in that, and they want choices in that, and Knox County has served well in that. I think most of our families like that traditional feeder pattern, your elementary, middle, high school. That works for a lot of folks. We're blessed that we have that, and we keep our community schools really strong when it comes to that. But we also offer choices, and we have a school like Ellen STEM Academy that is an unzoned school that people can come into that has very specific programming. Career Magnet Academy that's on Pellissippi's campus. I was there 2 weeks ago. Over 42 kids, I think 42 or 44 kids last year that graduated with associate's degrees. So Beaumont's another great example of that offers an honors program and a fine arts program. So I think we've got a really good mix in education, and we need to continue to make sure we're evolving programmatically to get kids ready. But I think we've hit a good mix of traditional schools and choice within our public system. And I think that's a good way to go moving forward.
Yeah. Is there concern about the passing of vouchers and maybe some of that public funding going away, or that the state might pay less attention to public schools? Is that a concern?
I honestly don't know what's at the heart of all those things. The legislators will consider that back and forth. I think there were some things that were brought last year talking about it not taking funding away. I think, you're right. I mean, that's one of the concerns as far as how much money's out there. But in the end, we look the same way with the county commission, our funding body. We're going to take the budget that we have, and we're going to deliver for our kids so that we can make sure that they're ready for life after high school. And in the end, we don't have control over the things we don't have control over.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there anything in the upcoming school year that you're really semester
Yeah.
that you're looking forward to? I know the 865 Academies is really kind of in full swing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been great. So all 14 schools are there now, are in this academy structure, and let me say a little bit about the why. Some people go, 865 Academy sounds cool, but what is it? For us, we have a graduation rate usually 90-91%. This past year was our probably highest on recent record. 93% of our students graduated, and for a long time that was our mark. Did you walk across the stage and get the credits? We've really moved our goalpost the last 3 years to have you demonstrated success for life after high school while you're in high school. And for us, that's really kind of 3 things. It's you would go enlist and serve in the military, learn great skills, and also get a GI Bill to be able to go on with education. You would enroll in a post-secondary, right? So that you would have, it could be a TCAT, it could be an associate's degree, it could be a bachelor's degree or further, and then the final is employed. But for us to be employed, it's not just any job. It's a high-demand, high-wage job, working with the chamber and looking at, what is the future projection of those. And usually that involves some level of industry credentialing or industry certifications. So 865 for us was this idea that if we really are the organization in town that's supposed to prepare these 60,000 students to be the next generation, then are we being intentional in our high school experiences to do that? So for us, that means every one of our high schools has a freshman academy now where all those students are in a part of the building, and no longer do we have a science department, math department, English department. We have teams of teachers around students who teach all those subjects, and they teach the students. After that freshman year, they get a freshman seminar course where they'll get exposure to aptitude testing, also guest speakers from local industry. We had over 9,000 interactions between local business CEOs and our kids last year, which is incredible because they need these folks to be on their team for the long term. So that was great. CEOs have been great about that and really giving us experiences and letting students go out. UT Hospital has been one of those. Our students in sophomore year get to go out. I had over 2,000 students last year to go work through the simulation labs at UT Hospital and consider those careers. So it's just one example of the many that are doing that. Their sophomore year, we send them all to Pellissippi. That's a great opportunity for us. That's a free 2-year for almost all of our kids. They do other visits as well for post-secondaries, and we continue field trips for them to go out into places of business. And then junior year, which we have some kids in that now, it's work-based learning. We're out looking for all of our juniors to get 2 to 6 hours of experience job shadowing someone in the academy structure that they're in, that's in that career field. I know this is our first year of having to do that for our juniors, and I think 55% of our juniors at the halfway point for the year have already had that experience, which was phenomenal for us, for them to know, I want to do this, or I got a little exposure to that and I don't want to do that. But one of the most important things we're hearing from our students is, we all weren't in these jobs, right? We had a pathway to get there. So when they get a chance to talk to a professional about kind of their pathway or their career, I think they can start seeing how they could be there. So really excited about that. So all those are guaranteed experiences that we want to provide for all of our students, and now all 14 of our schools are there. So we're excited about that.
Giving so many great opportunities for a lot of kids that they may not have had for this program. That's amazing. Anything else I missed? I know I've made you chat and chat.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, all good. No, I mean,
please stop asking me questions.
Yeah, I think there's some things we're excited for the upcoming semester. I think you asked that, and I probably answered everything but that question. So I think, we do have some things, like when we look at our data right now, we've, over the last 10 years, have been kind of inconsistent in middle school. And we think that a lot of that is because we haven't defined that well. We talked about the 865 academies and that exposure and empowerment for careers. High school is pretty well defined for Knox County. Elementary, we talk about that excellence in foundational skills as one of our priorities. And we've talked about the math. Math numbers are up 8.8% over the last 4 years in the 3 to 8 space. And then we talked about as well the advancements we're making in literacy. So doing a real good job there. And then we hit middle school.
It's kind of a gap.
Yeah, and the question is, is it extended elementary school or is it pre-high school? And our answer right now is yes. And what we need to do is define that a little better. So this spring we'll actually be doing, we've kind of done this for a lot of things, we'll bring in a third party to kind of compare what we're doing now to like national best practices, and then try to build a plan so that we can make sure we define that well. Our principals are working hard in that space, our teachers are working hard in that space, but we want to make sure parents and families, everyone understands what that is. And that we're working towards certain targets so that all our middle schoolers are ready for high school.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.